I was just telling Phil that this is a Jewish 1 o'clock. Not quite 1 o'clock. This is perfect, yes. But it's still hard to believe that it has been 3 years since we lost both Harv and Joyce. And because we really didn't get to grieve them appropriately, we've been moving along in our lives, but for many of us, we've never felt a real sense of closure, like we didn't get the chance to celebrate them together because they died right at the beginning of COVID, and even their funeral was just the family and me as the officiant. No one was able to really come together. And one of the things that we had actually promised to Harv and Joyce was that we would indeed have a time where we would celebrate them. And because we've just now said their yortzeit, we've just now commemorated their yortzeit, their anniversary of their death these past few weeks, it seems like this time is very fitting that we sit together and we share this time to honor their memories. So we take a moment to really celebrate and honor their lives and how even that they've been gone for this long, we can still come back together. They are still bringing us together because they were such a huge part of the fabric of this congregation. And I want to say how beautiful it is that we have generations of people here together. We have children and grandparents and all of us in between. That it wasn't just one age group that their legacy has affected. The music of these lives have ended and the final chords have been played, but their symphony continues even after death. The melodies filling our memories, beauty in life, harmony of love and friendship remain ours to savor. Energetic tempos of youth blend into stately rhythms of age, leaving their mark on the passage of time. Recalling moments of haunting beauty as well as measures of discord and pain, we pause, quietly remembering. For this couple, the final notes have sounded, but we hear their melody lilting, lingering, their music flows, guiding us to create our own symphony. Let us treasure the time we have and resolve to use it well, counting each moment precious, a chance to apprehend some truth, to experience some beauty, to conquer some evil, to relieve some suffering, to love and to be loved, to achieve something of lasting worth. May we fulfill the promise that is in each of us, and so to conduct ourselves that generations hence it will be true to say of us that the world is better because for a brief space they lived in it. We remember Joyce, an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor from the book of Proverbs, where it says, "A woman of valor who can find? She is more precious than rubies. Her husband places his trust in her and profits only thereby. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. She has no fear of the snow for her household, for all of her household is dressed in fine clothing. She is robed in strength and dignity, and she smiles at the future. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and a lesson of kindness is on her tongue. Her children rise up and make her happy. Her husband praises her. Give her credit for the fruits of her labors, and let her achievements praise her. Grace is elusive and beauty is vain, but a woman who is in awe of God, she shall be praised. Many women have excelled, but you, Joyce, you excelled them all." And Harv, what a mensch, a truly wonderful person. In the book of ethics, the ethics of our fathers, it is written that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai taught that there are 3 crowns which people wear: the crown of learning, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of kingship. But the crown of a good name, a Keter Shem Tov, exceeds them all. Harv earned and wore the crown of a good name, and his essence lives on through his children and his grandchildren, Carly, Joshua, Danielle, and Joel. And so we want to speak of their lives. And at this time, I would like to invite forward to begin speaking their son David will begin. And after David, we will invite Carly forward.
Playing with technology. Okay. Thank you for coming this afternoon. I look forward to sharing many happy memories of my parents with you. Please let me share with you a few things I remember about them. I remember my mother. I remember visiting on my mother's last birthday, sneaking in some of those relighting candles. You know, the ones that light themselves again after you blow them out. Mom loved to put some of those candles on our cakes growing up. She blew the candles out, and of course, they kept lighting again. She was lying in a hospital bed at their home. When she realized what I'd done, she laughed. "Oh, David," she said. I remember almost 50 years ago, after I moved out, staying over at my parents' house for a visit, and discovering in the morning she'd filled the back seat of the car with groceries. I like to bike to and walk around the Botanic Gardens, and often Mom would call me to talk while I was walking. I remember my father. I got my first job because Dad knew the store manager. Never filled out an application, never had an interview, walked in and started selling clothes. I can still remember when Joel was about 5, and Dad agreed to go with us to Cole Children's Museum. When we got there, the kids wanted to go in different activities, and we split up. I took Danielle, Dad took Joel. A few minutes later, there was my father. Predictably, he'd lost Joel. And, oh yes, we found him. I remember most conversations with my dad invariably ended with, "Here's your mother." One of the many things we did as a family was playing a card game we called Aunt Virginia's Game. It was easy to learn, but there was some skill. We played it many times when we went to visit them. The kids learned it, and my family played it to pass the time when we were in an airport or restaurant line. Dad was very competitive, and so became Joel and Danielle. We played it with Phil, Cheryl, Josh, and Carly, and have now played it with our cousins, Manny and Toby. It's a nice memory, especially when someone was playing a dangerous game and got caught. Sometimes when I visited, Dad would have something he thought he needed me to take. Before I could reply, Mom said, "Harv, David is trying to remove clutter, not add to it." My father always had things. We all remember that Mom and Dad were active in their community and their temple. They were lifelong learners. In my eulogy, I quoted Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton said, "Legacy. What is a legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden you never get to see. I wrote some notes at the beginning of a song. Someone will sing for me." But today is not about legacy. It is about celebration. And thus I quote a much more revered philosopher, who knows how to celebrate. Monty Python's Eric Idle. I ask that when you think of my parents, always look on the bright side of life. Thank you.
At this time, I invite forward their granddaughter, Carly.
Good afternoon. So I just wanted to start off with a Hebrew proverb that I found. My grandma, she was often at temple, and I just thought it was very fitting. And then, of course, my grandpa came along, as he loved to do anything that she liked to do. So, okay, so it's, say not in grief that he is no more, but live in thankfulness that he was. So I thought this was fitting just because a lot of the time, I think when it comes to somebody's passings, it tends to be a sad time, and I think that's just a natural feeling. But it's also important to remember the good times that we had. And some of the things that come to mind when I think of my grandparents were lunches at Elk Harbor. And my grandpa, he would always find something free we could take home, or he would just, sneak along in his pocket somewhere. We played card games. We loved playing Aunt Virginia's game, always just a time to be silly and just have fun. And then just the holiday dinners too. And I think one of the things I remember most about, well, especially with my grandpa, is he would always have, the cakes and the sugary items, and we always joke that, don't worry, Harv, there's no sugar in any of that. And my grandma would just kind of look on and, let him be happy and enjoy it. But those are just some of the best memories and more recent memories I have with my grandparents. And I really think that they were a good example of love. They were married for 65 years and knew each other even longer. And I think it's great. They did everything together, and I think that's something that we all want to have, is find somebody to share our life with and enjoy life with. And they exemplified that, and I think that's really special. And just personally for me, I hope to make them proud. Even though they're not here, I always feel them with me. I think about them. I even dream about them sometimes, and I feel like that's them just talking to me. So anyways, that's some of the thoughts I had, so thank you.
And I invite forward their son, Phil.
I feel like I'm giving a sermon with this giant book. An elderly Jewish couple in London won 20 million pounds on the lottery. They immediately set out to begin a life of luxury. They bought a magnificent mansion in Knightsbridge and surrounded themselves with all the material wealth imaginable. They decided to hire a butler. They found the perfect butler through an agency, very proper, very British, and brought him back to their home. The day after his arrival, he was instructed to set up the dining table for 4, as they were inviting the Cohens to lunch. The couple then left the house to do some shopping. When they returned, they found the table set for 8. Perplexed, they asked the butler why it was set for 8 when they had expressly asked him to set it up for 4. The butler replied the Cohens telephoned and said they were bringing the blintzes and the knishes. Thank you very much. You're a good crowd. You can tip me on the way out. This is my dad's joke book. A few of you I greeted when you came in, and it's like I had to read them, and I'm like, the first person was Harvey. Where are you? Where are you? He said, "And your dad's joke book." I'm like, oh my God, this is a sign. This is a sign. So those are the things that made it enjoyable. And on my notes here that I made, I had great parents. I was blessed with amazing parents. I mean, they were, like my daughter said, they were married for 65 years. They knew each other for almost 70. That's like 2 lifetimes. And what I saw, because it was a celebration of life here that we're at, but, it was a very quiet home. There was no arguing or fighting. No, that's not true. You guys, really? No, it was loud. It was boisterous. It was human. So, you realize that different memories, you know how the mind works. Just pictures coming up in my mind, just different arguments. But I always knew they loved each other, and that stayed with me for life. They affected me, my family, and everything I do in my life. I would not be who I am today without them. The story I'll share with you is I was the youngest out of 3. My brother's the oldest. My sister was the middle. And by the time they got to me, I'm like, whatever, you're okay. But my mom was the calming force for me. So when my mind would go crazy, my mom would come up to me and go, Philly, and only my grandma, my dad's mom, and my mother could call me. Oh, Philly, it'll be okay. Yeah, but Mommy, no, Philly, it would be okay. But Mommy, and it would go on and on and on. I would ask my mother, I was an open book. I would ask her for any question that happened in for dating, for kissing a girl. That was who I was. I just let my mom, I had that trust, that energy between my mom. Now, my dad was the one that, got us the jobs, made sure you showed up on time, or as I told Harvey again, when we got here, we were 40 minutes early. This is what my parents said. You go to a job interview and you sit in the car if you have to, but you're always early. And that's the things that I've lived with my whole entire life. My heart, my soul, my mind, everything that I do, everything they do together was amazing. My wife and I do everything together. And that was a big influence. We'd go to Trader Joe's. We live in Downers Grove, and when we'd go by and go, what are you doing here? And my mom would be laughing, and my dad with the cart, like this, going, Joyce, like my brother said, what do I do, Joyce, what do I do? But that was great, it worked for them. Don't ask my dad. If you had to ask my dad for a check, he wouldn't even know where it was or how to write it. So you couldn't do that, but it was just a blessing. Everything they did together. We used to go, I can't even read my handwriting. Love and faith. My relationship to God and the spirits and the angels and everything that are in my life and everything that I'm doing now is because of my mom and my dad. And mentioning, he didn't mention Grandma Mildred, but it's true. I mean, these things pass on from generation to generation. Hallelujah. Stand here today as a testament to their love. And as I grow older, my relationship with my wife, my children, my family, my brother, and everybody that's around, I do the best I can to be with them because it's important to have that connection. And that's what my parents always wanted, no matter what, because families don't argue, families don't disagree. But it's about being together, no matter what. And there's nothing wrong with disagreement. I don't want everybody to agree with. I want to hear other people's opinions. And it's not about how much we have. It's not about the money at all. Not about the clothes and the cars. And we already know that. It's how much we leave. Because if it was about how much we had, you go, honey, look, Jim and Susie's gone. How do you know? The house is gone, the car's gone, the garage is gone. It doesn't, unless somebody knows a secret how to get it. We can't get out of here alive. And we only have one chance to do everything the right way. And it's about what we can make a difference here and now. We got a one-way ticket. We start from dust, we end in dust. It's not something to be, I'm not saying it as into being depressing, but it's something to appreciate it. And one of the things I got, among many things, is my dad had a lot of watches. And I got this fixed. God knows how old this thing is. And I call this my gratitude watch. I got it fixed. Because every time I put my hand in my pocket, I'm grateful for the time that I have on this planet. So I will leave the same way, just like they do with like a musical or anything like a play. You got to leave the way you started, with another one from the book. I don't think I'll ever get through these books or these jokes. I mean, look at this stuff. A couple in their 90s are both having problems remembering things. During a checkup, the doctor tells them that they're physically okay, but they might want to start writing things down to help them remember. Later that night, while watching TV, the old man gets up from the chair and he says, "Do you want anything? I'm going to the kitchen," he asks. "Will you get me a bowl of ice cream?" "Sure." "Don't you think you should write it down so you can remember it?" she asks. No. "I can remember it." "Well, I'd like some strawberries on top, too." "Maybe you should write it down. You're going to forget it." "Stop it. I'll remember it. Ice cream, and you want a bowl of ice cream? Yeah, you want strawberries. I also like some whipped cream." I'm certain you're going to forget it. "Would you just write it down? Would you stop it? I'm going to be fine." Irritated, he says, "I don't need to write it down." Again and again. "I can remember the ice cream, remember the strawberries, remember the whipped cream. I got it. For goodness sake." Then he toddles into the kitchen. After about 20 minutes, the old man returns from the kitchen and hands his wife a plate of bacon and eggs. She stares back at the plate for a moment and says, "Where's my toast?" Thank you very much for coming. And in honor of my dad, there is Nosh.
So we're going to go off book for a moment. And that's always a scary thing. No notes. What's going to come out of her mouth, we don't know. And I'm going to tell the story of that when we had the funerals, it was very difficult. It was very lonely. It was very hard. And it was something that we talked about doing a memorial service, and then we didn't do it for a very long time. Okay, because the COVID came back and the rise, this and that, but it just feels like we are right on time to be together. It's just perfect timing. And it is exactly what our congregation needed to come together to remember the legacy of this amazing couple. So we're going to do something that we've never done before, and we might never do it again. But Phil and David gave me permission to open up the microphone. We're going to do a little open mic. We might never do this again. But if anybody would like to share a memory or a thought or a piece of wisdom or even one of Harv's jokes, raise your hand. I will bring you the microphone, and we will allow anyone who wants to process and share with us. So we'll start with Deb.
I have to say that they were the two most welcoming people in this congregation, and there's one thing that Harv always said whenever I saw him at services on Friday night. "How are you doing?" "I'm fine. I'm on this side of the grass." And I was surprised that nobody mentioned that yet, but I always remember that. I'm thankful I'm on this side of the grass. That's my memory.
Thank you, Deb. Langston, we're going to bring the microphone to you as well.
I was telling Harv's son, he said, how long have you been here? I said, over 11 years. And I said I would always sit here. Harv and his wife would sit there. And he would say, "I have a joke for you." And I was telling him, I said, whenever somebody says, "I have a joke for you," probably not that good. And he would tell me, and it was good. And I remember the jokes, and I remember the sweaters he had. So that's the one thing I'll always remember about Harv.
All right, you're going to be next.
In life, we're very lucky when we could count our friends on one hand, and I have to tell you that Harvey and Joyce were friends since 1960, and we celebrated many things together. And when Harv went to visit his mother on Sheridan, he would call Sid and me and say, we're going to lunch. And of course we would go to lunch, but he said to us, "I have to tell you a joke first." So that's how we always ended up at the bagel with a joke.
Hi, I'm Toby. I'm a second cousin of Harv and Joyce. So grateful that I had them in my life. And some memories that I have are when my mom passed away in 2016, Joyce said to me, she said, "Toby, if you ever need a fill-in mom, I could be your mom." And she was just always there for me. And also when I needed, to find a job, she was always there and said, "Whatever I can do, I can help you." She was just So always looking out for me and looking out for people and caring, and of course always looking out for Harv. Because I remember at their 80th birthday party and they had to blow out all the candles. He blew out some of the candles, but she had to finish blowing out the candles because he couldn't get all of them out there. And she was always saying, "Oh, Harv, oh, come on." And, you know, I mean, they would banter back and forth, and I loved when they did that. And then Harv, of course, every time I saw him, it was, "Did I tell you that joke?" And when I went to their house, they had several pictures, and he explained every one to me. He went all through the condo and explained every one to me, and many of them were like Southwestern pictures of, like, you know, those sweaters that he wore and the jewelry. You know, he was I loved his flair for that part of the world. And I have a picture or two of the mountains in Nevada, just so beautiful. Or not in Nevada, probably Arizona. But anyway, so I miss them, I love them, and thank you for letting me share.
Harv is very proud of being a veteran and like to talk about what he was doing in the military. And whenever we met with the kids here, he'd bring his jacket and talk about his time. As a member of the Jewish War Veterans, Harv was the greatest fundraiser when we did poppy sales. He just had to sit there and he had this smile. And people would come into Jewel usually, "Yeah, I'll see you on the way out." They always came back to see Harv when he came out, even if they came in a different door. "Oh, I forgot, he's over on the other side." So Harv, he was just, there was something magnetic that drew people to Harv.
I remember Joyce and her social kind of activities. She just really always cared about other people and was there for them, whether it was her work, working and finding placement for people, or helping volunteer with DuPage United. She just cared and was so warm and open to everyone. And the jokes, of course, we all remember the jokes. We took classes together, and the class had to start after Harvey told his joke always, which was funny. But Ron reminded me, and it is true, I think our favorite memory of Harvey was when we went to Israel a long time ago. The first time we went on a trip to Israel with Rabbi Bob. And I like to read everything, and I was often one of the last, I was always one of the last two people coming back to the bus. And it would be with Harvey, because Harvey would go out every time we went someplace, and he would get all the freebies. And he would have a freebie for everybody that, you know, told about where we were and everything, and he would pass it out. So if he was there and I was there, then everybody was back.
I just wanted to say kind of what you said too about how welcoming Harv and Joyce both were. And Joyce was one of those people that she smiled and her smile started from her eyes. I mean, just that warm, friendly smile, it was just a beautiful smile that she had and so engaging. And Harv with his jokes, and he wanted to make sure you heard his jokes too, because he'd be like, come down here, come on down. Like, I want to make sure you're gonna hear this joke. So just lovely, lovely people, and I miss them. I'll do.
Harv and Joyce were actually part of my life for most of my life. I believe David, the store manager who gave you your first job, was my dad, because they worked at Ward's together from 1964 through 1967.
What's his dad's name?
Lesser Levin.
Oh, yeah.
Was it? Sure. So, your parents were at my bar mitzvah. And one of the sweet things about your dad was I lost my dad when he was fairly young, and Harv would never fail to have a new story to tell me about my dad every time I saw him here at the temple. It's just very sweet. He was always asking about my mom, who also worked for your dad. So our families have been entwined for a long, long time. And your parents were just so very sweet and kind. Yeah. Wait, David was there, right? David worked there. David, but I heard the stories. Yeah. So David and my brother Keith worked together.
Did anybody else get chills when you heard hear that? It is. Did I see a hand anywhere else? One more thing. Yeah.
So if you need paper, pencils, what are the little clicky things, for the potato chip bags? Am I missing anything? I mean, we've got stacks. It's the grocery bags. Oh yeah, the grocery bags. There was like 1,000 of them, I think. And we just found stuff, and we have. It's hard to explain, but in her office at home, we have these stacks of paper, like this big, and we took them from hotels. God knows. My mom used to say he'd drop them off at the hotels because they have the shows, and she just let him go in and pick them up like an hour later with all the stuff. So you've got these stacks of paper like this, and my wife's got a thing on to put her cup on it, so we can remember it for the rest of our life. Yeah, can you imagine him being the one trying to collect money from people? I don't know how he could resist. So I just had to add it. If you need any paper or pencils, let me know.
Thank you for the tip there.
Oh, wait.
Oh, yep. No problem.
I did not know them well because I came from another family and marriage and all that. At Toby's wedding, I remember them dancing, and I was enthralled with them. I mean, they were like a young couple in love, and I just always remembered, so I knew exactly who they were. I saw them not a lot, but I saw them, and I knew this was a couple that loved one another and were still dancing. This was how many years ago, Toby? 2017. Yeah, so just wanted, that was my.
My dad wasn't moving very much, but my mom was.
I'm going to get you. Let me do Sam first, and then I'm getting my workout today. This is great.
Hi, my name is Samuel. I only knew him very vaguely from Friday night services. I would talk to him. Mostly we would talk while we were standing by the food or near there. And he had a way of expressing himself to express two emotions at the same time, which impressed me. In speaking about God and his belief, he had a firm belief in God, but he had a bone to pick with God. And he said, "There's one thing I don't like about God, and that is he took my daughter from me." And that just resonated. I never forgot it. And then I didn't know where he went. I did not know about this until I got the email. And then when I saw it, I saw the picture and I recognized it's the man I talked to. And so it dawned on me, I've been worried about the environment and all the forever poisons that are being put out there, that there's an organization called Environmental Workers Group, and they fight the cancer in advance by trying to go after the cause of the things that are in the environment that make us sick. And so I sent a $20 donation to the organization, and just in my mind it was because of Harvey.
My comment follows the woman over there who saw them dancing. And when she was speaking, I remember thinking about how much I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be like Joyce. I wanted to have this positive attitude and have that loving relationship that they both had. Thought they were such wonderful models for us.
I gotta tell you a secret, she was back.
I'm just going to follow that comment about collections. They have the art, they have the books. But the thing that two of them collected were friends. Okay? That everybody would meet them. It was yin and yang between the two of them. One was the giver, your mom, and then there was the collector. You had to love them.
Is there anyone else that would care to share a memory or a thought? Okay, I'm going to share a couple of my own memories and my own thoughts. I remember when we went to Joyce and Harv's birthday at Maggiano's. Many of us were there, and Phil had shared a toast. And you toasted to raising the glasses to memory, to family, to friends, and to love. And that your parents, that you loved your parents, but they gave you the example of love. And they didn't just give it to you, but they really did, as we heard from our comments, exemplify who we would want to be. That they loved each other, they loved their children, and they loved their friends. They loved their synagogue, they loved their Judaism. And how it played out was through their acts of kindness, that they were always here and welcoming us. They were sharing a joke, making someone smile. They were helping someone. And in our liturgy, the ways that we can be holy tells us to do those loving, kind acts, even if it's just to offer a smile to someone. All of us can do that. And so the legacy they leave to us today is to be kind, to be loving, and to be surrounded by real friends. Because in the world that seems like it's going crazy as of late, to have that community around them and to have a community that remembers is the greatest gift that we can share with each other. I don't know how we have lived without Joyce working for JVS. It's almost like we don't have the jobs that we used to, and she used to help so many people with resumes, with how to act going on a job interview. And she helped not only Jews, but non-Jews as well. She never asked, "Are you Jewish?" She just got the phone call, and she helped who was in front of her. And I wanted to share a couple of other things that they leave to us. They left their community together. Well, you all mentioned about having been together for about 70 years. They hadn't been apart since they met and started dating. The 3 weeks that Harv was without Joyce at the end of his life was the longest that he'd been without Joyce in his adult life. And I think it was very hard for him. I remember you sharing with me that you even tried to bribe him with was it a cheeseburger? I think so, yeah. That was impressive, though. But I think he missed her very much. And I'd like to think in my own theology that they are together with your sister, that they are together with her, which was such a devastating time when they lost her, and that their souls are at peace. Harv leaves us his love of furniture building, and hopefully the dresser that he made for Danielle is still being used, and bookcases and cabinets. He leaves us pinochle. We still play pinochle, and I like to think that Harv's essence is with us when we get together and still play. I remember Joyce would be on a bet din when Rabbi Camel would have a conversion candidate. He would call Joyce as one of the elders of the community, and she was so flattered to have been asked, honored, to be a part of the bet din, part of the 3 wise Jewish people on a conversion panel, to welcome somebody into our congregation. And so we are together bereft in many ways, but still grateful that they were with us. And so we recall that the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit falls back to the source from which it came, and that death has taken them physically from us, but their essence remains in our congregation, that the love that they shared with each other and with us remains. We remember them at daybreak as the sun peeks over the distant horizon. We remember them at dusk when vision is difficult and shapes are poorly defined. We will remember Joyce and Harv in the stillness of winter as the stark branches are set against a cold winter sky, and we'll remember them at the first signs of spring as the first blossoms bloom. We'll remember them when we are alone, and we'll always remember Joyce and Harv, for they continue to remain to be a part of us. Adonai natan va'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And I ask, if you are able to do so at this time, to please rise in either body or spirit for El Male Rachamim. El Male Rachamim, Shochein Bamrumim, Hamitzei Mechuna Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kadoshim, Utahorim, Kazar Harakia, Mazhirim. Et Nishmat Zvi ben Chaim Vashena, Fredel, Vashena Freda, Bat Ephraim Ubluma, Shahalach Laolamo. Be'al harachamim yastirehu beseter knafav leolamim. Vayitzror bet chaim et mishmato. Adonai hu nachalato. V'tanuach b'shalom al mishkavo. V'nomar amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Harv and Joyce Bogolub, who have entered eternity. O God of mercy, let them find refuge in your eternal presence, and let their souls be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is their inheritance, may they rest in peace, and let us say together, Amen. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, bi'alma divrach hiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agalalu v'zman kari v'imru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach leolam olmei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei dekudesha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. V'imru amen. Osei shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Osei shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, v'imru amen. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh Yahaseh shalom, Yahaseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Please be seated. This stroke of inspiration just came to me, so I'm going to go with it. In a few minutes, our service will conclude, and then we're going to go have a nice nosh. But we should always have a blessing together before we eat. And because Harv had a great joke about a motzi, I'm going to tell it. I'll put the motzi in the middle of the joke, and then we're yotzei, we're good. I tell you, I can't do this on my own. It's divine. And the joke is that there's a man out in the woods, and he comes across a bear. Frightened for his life, he runs as fast as he can to escape the bear, and he hides in a cave. And he's horrified to find that the bear has run after him and has found him in the cave. And he's trapped. So he closes his eyes and he begins to recite Shema Yisrael in anticipation of his final moments. But when he's finished saying the Shema, he opens his eyes and he's surprised to see that the bear is in front of him with his eyes closed, also praying. The man thinks to himself, how lucky am I to be cornered by what must be the only Jewish bear? We're mishpacha. I'm saved. But then he listens more carefully to the blessing of the bear. And what he hears is, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. And on that note, let's go have a nosh.